Welcome to today's webinar on how to take photos that tell your story as a Churchill Fellow. I'm Jonathan Laurie, Communications Director at the Trust, and I'm going to share with you my experience both of creating publications over many years and also editing magazines and working with many photos and photographers. And what we're going to talk about today really is how to take a good photo and how to use that to tell your story and to dramatize what your project is about. The first question to ask really is why bother with any of this? You're out there on the road researching your fellowship topic, and taking lots of photographs might well seem to be some sort of intrusion on your time and energy. However, when you come home and you want to communicate what your fellowship was all about and you want to pursue your cause and make change happen back here in the UK, you will find that photos are extremely useful. First off, they bring your ideas to life. Here we see the idea that this fellow has explored actually happening for real, and it's engaging and vivid and attractive. And secondly, a photo like that can be used to get him noticed. Here's how that same photo could be used on a Twitter feed, and easily you could replicate that for presentations, for the publication of your own report, for your website or blog, and so on. So these are worth bothering with because they give you more firepower to spread your ideas. So what makes a good photo? Well, first off, it needs to look good. Here we are, a nice, simple, clean, attractive photo. Bright colours, easy to understand. Secondly, a photo looks good if it tells a story. And here we can see very clearly something in process. We can see an activity and who's benefiting and how much they're enjoying it. And thirdly, a photo works very well if it doesn't need explaining. So we'll start by looking at the first of those things, how to make a photo look good, how to take one that works as a photo. And we'll look at these four areas briefly and see some easy ways that you could improve the work that you'll be making. First off, on the compositional front, with any photo, I would suggest make it as simple as possible. So decide what the photo is about, which we call the subject. So here, for example, is a photo sent to us by a fellow, and all the photos in this presentation will be sent to us by fellows. And it's hard to know what it's really about. Is this picture about the fellow, who's the person in orange? Is it about the person behind his right shoulder who's wearing the pink cap and yet leaps out at us visually? Is it about the film crews on the right? Is it about the building at the back? I can't quite tell what I'm meant to be looking at. If you crop that photo, you take it differently with a tighter frame, it becomes much easier to see that this photo is really about the fellow and his poster, "Take big dollars out of politics." And obviously it's at a public event because there's a film crew involved somewhere in the background. But the difference between those two photos is very clear, and one of them has an obvious purpose and subject matter. And whatever it's about is now filling the frame. The second thing about keeping it simple is to make sure that your background doesn't get in the way. So here you have a shot of two people. Unfortunately, there are two other people behind them who are getting mixed up with them, and there's a huge sale sign which is getting in the way and is the thing that leaps out at you when you first look at the shot. So when you take a picture, have a quick think about what's going in the background and can you get rid of it. A second obvious point about composing your picture is that you want to make it interesting, and one of the easiest ways to do this is to play with zooming in and zooming out. So here's what we call a wide shot. It's a view of a wide landscape. In this case, it's the interior of a workshop. And it tells us a great deal about where this story is taking place. You can use a mid-shot, which is when you zoom in a little around some action, say. So here are the people in the workshop doing what they do. And then for maximum power, you can zoom right into a close-up, and here's the musical instrument that has been made and somebody playing it. So you can see the difference in use of those different zooms, and if you're somewhere interesting and something interesting is happening, play with zooming in and out. Don't just take the one shot, take all three. And you'll find that then you have much more variety and impact in the range of shots that you can use later in your report. And finally, to keep it interesting, avoid what we call dead space. So in this picture at the top there, you can see an awful lot of black flooring, which is not a useful element in the picture. And actually what we would really wish to do is to zoom in on the guy at the desk, who is what's interesting in that shot. So make sure that you always fill the frame with the thing that you really want to be talking about. Another way to make your picture lively is to think about where you place the main subject. Now the classic thing is that we place the main subject bang in the middle of the shot. Here we are. There's a person. He's right in the middle, and in fact the symmetry of the shot is exaggerated because the yellow field fills the bottom half and the other elements fill the top half. It makes for a very pleasant, peaceful shot, but it does become very static. Visually speaking, there's no movement or dynamism or energy in that photo. Now compare it to this, where the people have been placed off to one side. What you get then is a sense of your eye moving through the shot towards the payoff, which is the people. Photographers call this sort of thing the rule of thirds. Those two women are occupying the left-hand third of that photo. And you can often do this. Here's another example. The ceramic tiles in this, which are actually the subject, they were made by a fellow as an installation in the city street. They occupy the bottom third of the photo and part of the left-hand third of the photo. And the child is looking towards them, out towards where those two third points meet. And that gives you a very dynamic shot. So something to think about is not just put your subject smack in the middle, which is such a common thing to do, but try and move the subject off to one side and see if that gives a certain amount of energy to your shot. Now, light is a crucial part of the photographic equation, and there are some very obvious don't do's which you can avoid. One is, don't shoot straight into the source of the light. This is a beautiful photograph of a vast, epic landscape, and clearly the fellow is enjoying their experience there. However, because they are against the light, their face is entirely in shadow, so we can't tell who they are and we can't tell how they're feeling. If you shoot straight into the light, you will find you get a silhouette effect like this, and whatever is up against the light source will be blacked out. If that photo had been taken from the other side, so that the camera had been on the other side of the fellow and the fellow had been turned around, their face would have been in good light and we'd have been able to see much more about them as well as the landscape. If you're outdoors, don't shoot if it's too bright. Here you can see that bright midday sun has caused a lot of glare on the face of the person, on the background, in the sky. And one of the problems with being outdoors to take a shot is that often very bright light at midday tends to flare everything out. You'd do better if you know you have a key shot to take that's outdoors, to think about doing it towards the beginning or end of daylight when you get softer, often slightly pink, warm light that's very friendly, and you don't get this harshness. If you're indoors, also think about the light. In this photo, there's so little light around that all we're really seeing is the slide projected onto that screen. So if you're indoors, look for available light, like this, and make use of it. A top tip for indoor photography is try and see if there's a window and put the subject, the person or whatever it is, near the window where the natural light falls through the window onto that person. You'll get better light and softer light than with harsh neon ceiling lights. Now, there are a number of shots that you are likely to want to take on your trip, and some of these can be tricky to get right. The most obvious one is the classic meeting photo. The trouble with these and a shot like this is that it's entirely static. Nothing is happening. The two people are not meeting visually. They're not looking at each other. They're not talking to each other. They're looking at the camera. So this is a shot of nothing happening. It relies on us being interested in who those two people are, which is somewhat useful if they're interesting. But as a visual prompt, it doesn't tell us anything. Here's a much more interesting version of the same sort of shot. And why it works is because the two people are looking at each other, they're in mid-flow, and one of them looks interested in the other. So that's a much more successful version of a meeting shot. Here's a team photo shot, which is another classic type of picture that you may want to take. These are the people you'll be meeting. The trouble with this shot, again, is that nothing is actually happening. They're all just standing there staring at the camera. It has no visual interest at all. Not only that, the camera is so far away from the people that there's an awful lot of stuff in between us. There's a table with some quite interesting looking graphics, and there's a lot of ceiling, dead space. Here's a better version of the same type of shot. We're much closer to the people, we can see them more clearly, there's less dead space, we can see what they're about because they're obviously in a kitchen, so we've got the context of their world. And also they've been ranged in a variety of positions. Some are kneeling, some are crouching, some are standing, they're closer or further away from the shot. And that didn't happen accidentally. The photographer has told them to do those things. And that makes for a much more engaging and interesting version of the same shot. Another type of photo you will inevitably find yourself wanting to take is where you're at an event or a conference and there are people speaking. How to do this right? Well, here again, the conference shot is quite static. People are far away. There are things getting in the way, furniture. We can't see faces. We don't see any human interaction. A better version of that shot is at the least that the conference is in mid-flow and someone is doing the speaking, and we see the context of the whole thing because we see the audience. So one of the tips, if you definitely want to get a shot of a conference happening, is to get yourself behind the audience, as here, and show the audience watching the speaker. That gives context to what's happening. We see the conference in action. A more extreme version of that idea is this, where the photographer is actually in amongst the audience, we see their heads, and then we see the actual speaker in close-up. So again, getting closer has helped quite a lot. Compare that to the first shot of a conference, and you can see the difference in impact. If you're at an event and there's somebody special here, as with Nicola Sturgeon in this one, then it's really useful to get that shot. Get yourself with the person, so ask someone else to take the shot, and you'll find you can use a picture like that quite a lot because it shows that you're in contact with influencers. A better version of that shot is this, where there's an informality and an interaction happening. And as with a lot of the shots that we've already looked at, interaction between people, reaction, emotion, bring shots alive in a way that the more static versions of the same subject just can't do. This last one has a certain informality, as does the other bottom photograph of the woman speaking at the lectern. And informality helps to make an event seem realistic rather than wooden and staged. Now, you'll be visiting lots of places. How do you photograph a place and make it interesting? Here's a photo that doesn't do that. It's a building of some sort with a lot of dead space around it. There is a very small person doing something, but we don't know what it is, and we don't know what the building is. So this photograph doesn't really tell us anything very much. By contrast, here's an exterior of a building where we know immediately where we are because there's a big sign telling us it's the Boston Children's Hospital. Not only that, there is a person very large in the frame who may be the fellow or maybe a doctor at the hospital, and that brings humanity into the shot. We realize what this place is about, and there is a little bit of a story that somebody is visiting it or working there. The same runs for offices. Here's a quite static shot of an office. It's not visually very interesting, and I don't have a sense of what sort of office this is. But this shot shows me something happening there. They're having a meeting, somebody's giving quite an interesting looking presentation, and the other people are very intrigued by that. So immediately you've got human interaction and you have a sense that this is an office where things happen. The last kind of tricky shot that you may have to take is of people, often yourself, or of other people that you meet. Now, this is a big genre in the photographic world. There's a lot one could say, but I'll just run through a few examples of portrait photos that do and don't work. And here's one that doesn't. The problem with this shot most immediately is that the lighting is absolutely terrible. The eyes are very, very dark. The body is dark. The background is pale and uninteresting. Not only that, the camera is so close to the person that the facial features have been exaggerated by that perspective. By contrast, here's the same sort of shot. It's just a head and shoulders, but it's completely different in its effect. For starters, there's some facial expression. There's a slight smile. The camera is further away from the person, so the face is not exaggerated. And the lighting is much better. In addition to that, it's been taken outdoors, which means there's a slight sense of a place. It's being blurred out so as not to confuse our attention. But we do have a sense that this is a real person in a real place. So taking an outdoor shot against a very gentle background can be a good way of livening up a standard head and shoulders shot. Now, if you want to look very professional, you could do it this way, by wearing a certain sort of costume and perhaps the glasses and so on. It's like the shot above it, taken just with a grey background, but it's properly lit, it's at a proper distance, and the person has an expression that seems to be very professional. Interestingly, this is the same person, the same fellow, against a different backdrop, in different clothes and with a different expression. It's much more like the photo above it. And with the impression that this gives, really, is of somebody who's relaxed and approachable. So you can choose to present yourself in different ways, and both those shots would be extremely useful in different contexts. A lot of us rely on selfies for pictures of ourselves. Here's one, and it illustrates why they can let you down. For starters, when you're photographing yourself on your smartphone, it's hard to get the composition and positioning right. So this person, instead of being in the middle of the frame where we look at them, is off to one side and we find ourselves looking at the interior of that room. Not only that, because they can't really see the image properly whilst they're taking it, they're not aware of the lighting issues there, so the face of the person is in shadow, whereas there's loads of light on the irrelevant detail at the back. And of course, as in many selfies, you don't know where to look when you're taking it, so the eyes are not looking at us, they're looking at an odd bit of the camera. I would heartily recommend, if you want good photos of yourself, to have them taken by another person so that they can be far enough away from you and they can be paying attention to those issues, and your attention can be spent on what the two right-hand photos at the top here do, which is looking relaxed and personable. Here's another picture of a person in that context, but it's been properly framed. The person is in the middle. The background isn't intrusive because it's far away. The lighting is good. They're looking at us. Interestingly, they've got a prop as well. They've got the stethoscope, which tells us something about their profession. An extension of that is this shot, which is what photographers call an environmental portrait. That's a grand name for saying that you are photographing somebody in their own environment. Here it's obvious that this man is a fisherman. He's surrounded by the tools of his trade. And that can be a very useful photo to have of the people that you're dealing with on your trip, particularly the beneficiaries of your project idea. Now, photos can be a bit risky in the sense that when you take it, that's the only chance you'll ever have to get it right. So there are things you can do to reduce the risk of getting it wrong. One is, very obviously, to take the shot in both vertical and horizontal formats. Photographers call that a portrait format and a landscape format. This is exactly the same shot, but somebody's bothered to turn the camera on its side and get a second one. Why would you do this? Well, the horizontal one on the right is the sort of shape that you would use for your Twitter feed, because that's the shape of a Twitter feed. The left-hand shot that's vertical would be the sort of shape you might use for the cover of your fellowship report, because that's what an A4 report is shaped like. Equally, if you're making a slideshow, you might well use the right-hand shot, because that's the size and shape of a slide. So it's always worth thinking of just turning the camera on the side if you've got a very good shot. Secondly, to reduce your risk of missing out, take the shot in different ways. This is also the same fellow with the same flag in the same place. It's the South Pole. But she's decided to take it sitting on top of a dune of snow with a different pose and with just one person. So now you've got a range of opportunities for the shot, and that's quite useful. If you had a 50-page report and you wanted to use that subject a couple of times, you would want a different shot rather than a repeated one. And here again is another version of the same shot, but with different people, different poses. Same subject, I got my flag to the South Pole, but a different way of doing that particular shot. So it's worth, with a key shot like that, being a little bit creative. And then my final tip on hedging your bets would be to make sure that you take any given shot that's important a couple of times over. Just one after another, hit that button so that if anything has gone wrong, you've got a little bit of a margin of error. If someone's eyes were closed in one of these shots, you would want to have a second shot, almost identical, but 2 seconds later, when the eyes were open. So we've talked about photos that work as photos. Now let's talk about photos that work to tell a story. And we're going to look at how you capture action, how you convey information, and then how you tell your particular story as a Churchill Fellow. So in terms of action, you can break down most topics into a number of moments. So here's one. If you're visiting a concert for a music project, the key moment in that topic is when the musician is playing. You can work that out in advance, and you can make sure that you're near to the piano when the person starts playing it. You catch them in mid-song with the audience watching them. That's a key moment in the topic. And any topic can break down that way, and you can work that out in advance and work out where you need to be to get it. Once you've identified it, get really close. A lot of the strength of this photo lies in the fact that we're right in there with them, so to speak, enjoying that moment of interaction. And lastly, show the reactions of those involved. This photo of people dancing is immeasurably improved by the fact that we can see on their faces how they're feeling about the experience. And as I've said before, human action and reaction and interaction is the key to many photographs working well. So you can break down your fellowship topic into a number of key moments and try and get photos of them. Beyond that, you want to tell us something about what these moments mean. Give us some information on them. Now, one of the things you can do is to use props. We've already seen someone who used a stethoscope to convey their profession. Here again, these two people have got musical instruments, which tells us that they are musicians in some fashion. What's happened is the photographer has told them to go and pick up some instruments to show what they do. And you can use props in lots of situations to convey information. You can also look out for useful graphics, posters, signs, plaques, and so on. In this photo, the graphic tells us a great deal about the place, not only where it is, but also that it's the remotest island. And that's really a useful way of telling a story. A lot of companies, like Twitter, use symbols to convey their identity. And so if you can find a symbol and place yourself beside it, this fellow was visiting their headquarters in America. It tells us that you have been visiting that company. We don't need any written information. We've got the idea. And here's the same use of a symbol where the door of number 10 Downing Street tells us that that fellow is influencing policy at the highest level. And the symbols there that are important are the number 10. Otherwise, it's an ordinary door. So make sure that you don't cut the symbol off, but get it in. Another thing you'll want to tell us in your story is who you are. So, I'm a policeman. That's conveyed through the uniform, the tools of the trade, so to speak, the car, a little bit of a graphic. It's very clear who that person is. I'm a musical instrument maker. I'm wearing a maker's apron. I'm carrying a half-made instrument. We immediately visually get who you are in a way that's interesting and engaging. We see you do your job. So if you want to convey profession, use the tools of the trade, the uniform, the workplace to convey that. If you want to get across character, you can use some props. So this person is clearly an adventurer because they've got an adventurer's costume on, the hat and the clothes, and they're sitting somewhere exotic. This person is clearly an achiever because of their body language. And we get a sense that the person who's managed to do a fellowship to that place in their wheelchair is clearly an achiever. And if you want to say that you're a Churchill Fellow, look out for Churchill props of some sort. There are statues and plaques and other paintings and so on all over the world. It's a really useful shot to have you next to the man himself. Next in your story, you want to tell us what you're doing. Most obviously, you're traveling the world. So a photo of you against a backdrop of the place you're going can be useful. It doesn't tell us a great deal, but it's a nice kind of scene setter. More interestingly, you're learning about a topic. So get yourself learning that topic with someone who's teaching you. Or get people who do that topic and photograph that at least. More powerfully yet, you're trying to help some people. Or the person you're visiting is trying to help some people. So here we have the beneficiaries, the children, and the teacher. Or it could be the fellow. But there's this sense of beneficiaries being helped, and that's quite a powerful shot. And then, of course, if you're on a fellowship, you'll be having an amazing experience. Here's a Hampshire policeman visiting the Los Angeles Police Department and about to get a ride on a helicopter. Great shot, tells you a lot. But interestingly, of those 4 photos, I would say the most powerful and useful one is of the beneficiaries. And that's the shot that we get the least of from fellows, interestingly. So do have a thought about that. You'll want to tell us where you're visiting. So, you're visiting a foreign country. We know from the prop, those animals, exactly where you are in the world. Beyond the travel element, you're visiting practitioners, the people who do the thing that you're researching. And then again, you're visiting beneficiaries. Here's a fellow in a homeless camp in California. And again, of those 3 shots, for my money, I would say the beneficiary shot is the one that had the most interest and the most emotional impact. So do think about beneficiary photos. And definitely you will want to convey why your fellowship issue matters. And that breaks down into those 4 steps there that I've shown. It matters because there's a problem. There's a whale being caught in a net. It matters because there's a solution. Here's an educational technology project being put into practice. It matters because we can help these people, the elderly, taking physical activity to improve their well-being. And it matters because we can influence the debate. Here's a fellow on the right doing radio work to share her ideas. Those 4 photos, especially the one of the problem and the one of the people who can be helped, are very useful to bring your fellowship idea vividly to life. Now, whatever else you get or don't get photographically, I think there are 2 shots you must always aim to try and get, and here they are. One is, crucially, you as the fellow on location in action. So here the fellow is on the right. They've used the prop of the stethoscope to tell us they're a doctor. They're clearly somewhere in Asia, and they are learning from a local person, perhaps a local expert, about the subject. That is such a usable photograph. I've used that particular one many times over because it gets so many correct elements that tell the story of that fellowship. The fellowship itself was about children in Cambodia and Laos, and so of course there's a child in the background. The second shot you might want is of your idea in action. This project was about physical activity and dance, and there we see it happening in the place where it was researched by the fellow. Those two shots of you in action and of your idea in action are absolute essentials. Please try and remember to get versions of those. I'll finish just by talking a little bit about how to organize your photography for yourself, because you are not there as a professional photographer, but there are a couple of issues that will make everything go much easier for you. And the first is just to plan this sort of thing. So I've talked about some shots that are really key. You in action, your idea in action, beneficiaries, and other things. And what you can do before you even go on the road is to make what photographers call a shot list. It's a bullet point list of exactly those types of photos, and then where you think you might be able to get them, in which place, at which organization, at which moment in your trip. And the reason that's useful is because you can check against it when you're out on the road and make sure you did get them. And if you didn't, make sure to get them at the next stop or wherever else would be suitable. So then you make sure that you've already identified the key 5 or 6 pictures you really want to get in your 2-month trip, and where you will get them, and perhaps even you might email ahead to your hosts and say, I would like to get this sort of picture in this sort of place. Can I have your permission? Can I have 10 minutes to get that picture? And then you can build in little moments of time when you can actually allow yourself to get the right shot without being too hassled. What you don't want to be doing is snatch shots, as we call them, that you thought of on the hoof at the last minute. They're not done in time, and they're not a considered visual creation. In terms of gear, I would actually keep things very, very simple. To get a decent photograph, you don't need a fancy camera. These days, a smartphone is as good as an average sort of a camera. If you want to take a better one, that's great. Make sure you know how to use it and you're familiar with it, and that you're not so unfamiliar that you spend most of your trip worrying about the gear. Keep it simple. A smartphone will take all the video that you need as well these days. It's much more important to be thinking about a good shot rather than good equipment. Storage of your pictures is quite important, because what you don't want to do is to take all these lovely shots and then lose them on the road. So a professional photographer would make sure that every evening back at the hotel, they actually do a backup of that day's pictures into the cloud, so that even if they lose their baggage or their camera or their phone, it's stored somewhere that they can access when they get home. And that's quite a good discipline if you can face it. Post-production is the process that photographers talk about when they have taken the shots, they've got back to their studio, and they start playing with them in something like Photoshop or Lightroom. Now, that's quite a skilled thing, and it can go quite wrong quite easily. My advice would be not to worry too much about that. Just try and make sure that you take good shots at the time when you're on location on the trip, and don't rely on being able to play with them afterwards. It takes an awful lot of time, and it's not easy to do well. So my top tip would be try and get a range of good shots when you're out there. When you've just taken the shot, have a look at it. If it wasn't quite right, take it again. And don't worry about or rely or commit yourself to a vast process of post-production when you get home and actually you're far too busy doing other things. Finally, I think the thing you need to do about organizing your photography is have a reasonable amount of caption information. The minimum you'll want to know for a given shot is where it happened and who it was with. You might have names of the people, or you might have the type of people. The Los Angeles Police Department, perhaps, even if you don't know the name of the individual policeman. But you do need that sort of information for when you come to publish it or talk about the shots, and you need to be able to describe where they are and what's happening. The easiest way to do that is that when you back them up into folders that say where the thing happened and perhaps some of the key players, and then you can refer to your notes for the rest of the information. But without decent captions, simple explanatory captions, you'll find you're a bit lost when you come to use them. That's all I'm going to talk about today. Thank you for listening. If you have specific queries about taking photographs, please feel free to contact me, Jonathan Laurie, at the Trust anytime. Drop me an email. I'm happy to have a chat on the phone about whatever your photographic needs and projects are. Thank you.